Okay, folks, good evening. Invasion of tanks here. Well, we need to clear our workspace here. And I know we're soon gonna work on these Soviet ones, but we've got, only bad thing about this, these things slide all over the place, but we've got 376 millimeter armed Soviet tanks, T-34s, and two 85 millimeter T-34s. So let's get them off. And I have this guy here as I was comparing greens. Oh. Working on multiple things at once. So we got something in the mail today, something very generous that was sent to me by Marcus. And he knew I was having a dilemma with decals, and he sent me a note here. Four of these have the same outline issue, but the rest are okay. I have a lot more if needed. And he sent me all kinds of, and the video side backwards. We're back to that happening again. Didn't happen for the longest time. When it doesn't happen, I don't even check for it. It just automatically reverts to it being the correct way. So there is two sheets of Panthers. So this is, here is the decal style that we want with the white on the outside. And some Panzer IV decals. I guess this is the Airfix one. 3 of those. And three of those on there, and 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, and then some for the Panzer 3L from. Oh, it's a Revell one. That's funny because I have the Revell one and it has a different one. Anyhow, so we've got some all kinds of decals here we can do for the crosses. We can take these 322s and change up the numbers. So we can make one of them 322 like it's supposed to, do another one as 223, and so forth. Yeah, so thank you very much. That is most handy. So this Panther has been waiting in the wings for the crosses. So we're going to go ahead, and we're not going to be able to do that tonight. But we need to go ahead and put the gloss coat where the numbers are going to go, just so I'm covered. And I was looking at this, and I'm like, this is actually a Panther that, from what I can tell, was never made. And what I'm getting at is this is a Panther A. You can tell it's a Panther A by this little vision slot here. Has a vision slot here, and it has the ball mount from the machine gun. So those two things make it a Panther A, among other stuff. And all Panther A's had Zimmerit on them because there were several tanks that came out of production during the period between August 43 to October 44. And pretty much anything that was made during that time came out of the factories with Zimmerit on it. Main battle tanks, Panzer IVs, Tiger 1s, Panthers, pretty sure Stugs as well, all during that time period. Vehicles that were already made were retrofitted in the field, so they were real sloppily put on there. So this Panther A falls in the time period. The production switched over to the G around, I want to say May of 44, just before D-Day. There were some Panther Gs at D-Day, very few. And some of the early Gs would have had Zimmerit on them as well. So pretty much one of the improvements that they made on the Panther G model, is they added, and it's not really prevalent on this model, this is a Hasegawa kit, there is a problem with the the shells would come in. I mean, the Panther has really good armor from the front, but it was a shell trap here. So it would end up hitting the front of the mantlet and then ricocheting down on the top of the crew compartment. And that's bad news for the driver and the assistant driver. So on the G, on the later Gs, they added a chin. And it's not really prevalent here, but it's a little thicker piece of armor here at the bottom of that mantlet to try to prevent that from happening. The G chin was put in after the Zimmerit ended. So any Panther that has the chin is not going to have Zimmerit on it. I know, anal retentive little things. So, you know, it's cool to find out that kind of stuff, but at the same time, I'm not going to put Zimmerit on this. So this is just one that got away. Just, you know, it's just kind of food for thought. You know, I'm not going to paint it gray, but at the same time, you know, it's good to know those differences. And it's like, okay, what do you want me to do about it now? So this thing is ready to go except weathering and decals. That's what kept me from finishing it. So let's put these decals away for the time being. We'll be messing with them tomorrow. And we will put the wet spots where this thing goes. And the Panzer IV H that I wasn't able to finish was a decal issue as well. So let me make sure the spots on it. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do all the decals tomorrow. But we're going to go ahead and put the gloss coat spots. I don't know if that helps. It sure seems like I'm not getting any issues with the decals are basically invisible. And hello, Glenn. I don't remember if I told you or not, but hello. Welcome back. Okay. Let's get one that's a little bit better than that. And you don't have to put this on really thick. This is what I use. Floor care finish. It's acrylic. It actually smells great. And it doesn't have, you know, a chemical smell, so I don't think you can get high on it. Not that I would be interested in that. Let's do a couple things. I don't know that I'm going to put across there because there's not enough space, but I'm going to go ahead and wet that spot and here just for good measure. And I'm going to do the side of the turret here, side of the turret here. See, this is the color it was originally. Horrible. And I may put a cross back here. And I think that's it. That's all we're going to do on this guy. So we'll let this thing dry. We can put it back in the bin where it goes. And we'll decal it when we decal the Panzer IV H as well. Which it already has the turret numbers on it. It just doesn't have the crosses. I didn't have enough. So I'm even going to use the ones that say for a Panzer IV with this guy. So that's super handy. And is this one weathered? I think this one, I don't remember. No, I don't think it's weathered. You gotta look at the tracks. It takes no time to do that. Okay. Cool. So what else we got on the table here? Well, we've got my first shot of experimenting with this plastic putty masking. I painted like 18 freaking vehicles. And I just did the base coat on them and stuff like that. So here's one that it looks extremely grainy. This is not extra paint or anything. This is exactly how this thing came. And it is super grainy. So I think what I'm going to attempt to do with this thing is make it look like it's muddy, like they've smeared mud on it. Because that's, I mean, look at let's see if we can. Come on, focus, damn it. I think I need to. It is very, very rough. And Yeah, there you go. This is a good view of that. It'll be fine as a War Games model. I don't know who the hell I picked up from. I want to say it's a BP cast one, but I could be wrong. I don't think it's a BP cast now that I think about it. But anyhow, somebody made this a long time ago when I picked it up, and I'm repainting it. And this is another one. I want to say this one's Frontline. I could be wrong. But I did the masking with this putty, which was kind of interesting. It was kind of interesting to use. It's supposedly reusable. And the color blends back into it. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I hope it's reusable. Many, many times. It's very, very expensive, so, for what it is. But we masked this stuff off and sprayed it. Obviously, you see how these colors are solid. It's not going to stay like that. It's going to have weathering on it. It's going to be a little bit smoother. But I think it's better than hand painting these designs because you can kind of, I don't know, it's more forgiving in that if you change your mind where you want it, it's easier to move that around. But I think that's pretty effective. Anyways, this will look good when it's done. So we have this to do. I got to do some research on exactly how I want to pull this one off. I'm sure I'll end up doing it just fine. So I think with everything said, I'm going to finish my build on the Panzer III that I did on Sunday that I wasn't able to finish. I think that's what I'm going to do. I've got it here on the table. I might as well do that and knock that thing out. Which glasses do I have on? Okay, I've got readers that are, what are these? I can hardly read them. Plus 325. Okay, so they're like half as blind as I am with nearsightedness, literally. Okay, I think we should be able to build a tank with that. Okay, and not take the contacts out. So that's what we're going to do, and we will decal tomorrow, including what numbers I'm going to use for this guy. It's funny because I didn't want to use, I used a color that's reflective green, which is the green that's recommended by Vallejo to use for the 3-color scheme. The one they call olive grün, the olive green one from AK. And I am a fan of this paint. For airbrushing, this stuff is great because minor cleanup and you don't have to thin it or anything. And it works really well. I like Vallejo better for dry brushing. I like that stuff better for airbrushing. And I like them both. So, okay. So, where in the heck did we leave off? Did you come in too late? Well, I've only been on for 10 minutes or so. Yes, it's too late. Go home. Wait, you're already home. Nope. You are not too late. All right. So this is where we left off. If you guys didn't catch this weekend, you missed out because I kicked the shit out of this separate link track. I can't wait to do more vehicles with separate link track. And again, it's good if you're not in a hurry, you know, because if you need to, like, I gotta get this thing built today, you may not be able to because it takes some time. So I think we left around here, somewhere in here. We've got those hatches in. We've got the machine gun in place. We've got this step already. 16, we've got those things in. Piece 90, which is the fire extinguisher, I think goes on this hole, but I'm not going to put that down until I can confirm that because I don't want that to go in the wrong hole and then we got a problem. So let's put the 2 vents in, which is 32 and 34. That's the 2 vents that are going to go in this location. This is a beautiful model. It really is. And I did search on, there's a website called, well, there's several websites, but one of them is called On the Way 172nd. And the other one is called, I'm going to do 34 first. The other one is called Scalemates and the Henk and Holland site. And between all of them, I wanted to see if Revell of Germany, which is what the manufacturer of this is, made any more models of this quality. And the other Panzer 4H that I have, which is just as good as this. And really, that's like the two top models that they have. They make other things, but they've got all kinds of supposed errors in them and stuff. Which I'm not hugely picky on, but if I can get the right kit, I'll get the right kit if I don't already have it. If I have something and it's inaccurate, well, we're going to make the best of it. We're going to make the best of it. And I'm really enjoying the I don't have to get this done by any time problem. Not this weekend, but the following one, we have our show in Orlando. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to going to a show with no responsibilities. That hasn't happened in a long time. I don't have to run anything. I can take my time and look at the vendors. There's not that many vendors, but I can do a thorough search of them. I don't know that I'll make a video of the convention. I'm not sure. Depends what I feel like. This one's 34, and 34 fits on the port side like this. And of course it fits in there nicely because everything in here and this thing fits nicely. Okay. I'm actually signed up to play nothing in particular on Friday. So I don't know what that means. I doubt I'll be bored. Ah. I don't think I'll be coming home with as many tanks as I did last convention, though. That's kind of a tall order. Okay, that one fits like that. I'm going to flip over and do the other side. If I had better lighting arrangements, I'd probably start doing airbrushing for dummies. Or maybe I need to word that somewhere different. A dummy airbrushing. Because, I'm an experienced painter, but I'm new to the airbrushing stuff. And I am enjoying figuring things out on my own. Or, sometimes I'll be like, I watched a video on how to use this stuff. I didn't want to, use it on my own. This is a piece of shit. This is no good. And some people had, it stains your model. I didn't have any problems with staining. But I've made a lot of progress on the airbrushing in the last week, I'd say, in the last week. That's the thing that I noticed. I ended up priming about 30 vehicles. And in doing so, I was airbrushing for several hours. And in doing so, I learned a lot by, constantly doing it back to back to back to back, instead of just doing one vehicle, cleaning it up. And I did manage to kind of get a grip on that Vallejo airbrush primer. Well, it's the surface primer, not necessarily just for airbrushing. And how to get it to behave better. But I watched a lot of videos on airbrushing, and I'd like to make a video at some point that answers the questions that I had when I started. Instead of, that's why I said for dummies. Like, okay, you don't know anything about airbrushing. What do you start with? What should you get first? That kind of stuff. I've been there. I had to figure it out, So. Okay, let's do the 17 area first. That's where that's where the antenna is. Okay, this sprue is almost gone. We've almost eliminated this whole sprue. So let's go ahead and get rid of this extra stuff. I watched a really good video this morning. I was trying to do some hobby stuff this morning. I didn't. I just ended up watching videos on how to use the plastic putty from Vallejo. So next time I mess with that, which will be in these joints, I got some ideas on how to move forward with that more efficiently. Oh, is it 31? It is 31. Oh, this thing stinks. Okay, so this has a tiny little piece here. This has a tiny little piece for the antenna that is too thin, too small for an antenna to actually go in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with this the same way that the other Panzer IIILs were done. I'm cutting this little tip off, and when I put the antenna in, I will put a 90-degree turn in it, and it will go in that way. And there's enough meat in this for it to sustain the antenna in there. Because they want me to put this sideways like that, okay, and then the channel for it is piece 89, which is right here, and there's not an antenna in there, so I'm going to put the antenna deployed, but I'm not going to be able to deploy it and go in through this piece because the wire is bigger than the piece. But I can put it through the other one. So let's go ahead and cut this off. Well, that was easy. You got an airbrush in the fire, warm enough now to use in the garage. Would love it if you made an airbrush video so I can learn. Well, I gotta word it. The problem when you do these learning videos is there's always people like, that's not how you do it. Well, look, I'm going to admit I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But I think because I don't know what I'm doing, I have these questions that may be helpful to other people. you don't want to get a cheap airbrush, because a cheap airbrush won't work, and then it'll cause you save money on it, but then you're gaining a ton of frustration, or you're not going to use it, which means whatever you paid for is wasted. You need a compressor with a tank. It doesn't have to be an expensive compressor, and it needs to have a moisture trap in the tank. I ended up getting one, and it came with a free airbrush that I'm not using. So it's like $150, Amazon or whatever, and then get a good airbrush, and that's all you need. That's the two things you need, and you don't have to, but in order to not be frustrated, you need to get an airbrush that is gravity fed, not the siphon one. The first one I got that I painted all the mats for DBA was a siphon one, and it shouldn't be that difficult. You shouldn't have to fight it all the time. It's like, if it's really difficult to use, I am not a very incompetent person. I have attention to detail and all that kind of stuff. I may not be the best at everything, but there's worse painters that can handle airbrushing like champs. Okay, so it's just a matter of just practice and kind of getting the feel of it. The same way it's second nature for me to like mix paints and colors and stuff like that and do the layering. I don't even think about that. So it can't be that difficult. But, you look at one video, one guy says to do this, another guy says to do that, and the other thing, and, it's like, none of us are made of money. So you don't want to buy stuff that you end up not using, right? I kind of like, buy the minimum you need, and then when you realize, okay, this airbrush, I'm using it all the time. All right, let me get an upgrade for this. Let me do an upgrade for the other thing. So really, a compressor with a tank. It doesn't have to be an expensive one. Even the professionals say you don't have to go and buy a $300 one. It just needs to have a tank, and it has to have a regulator on it. Like the really cheap one that I got didn't have a regulator. And then my airbrush came with a moisture trap, so I actually have two moisture traps. I've got a moisture trap before you get to the airbrush, and a moisture trap that goes to from the tank. And the other day when I drained it, I swear there was 4 ounces of water in it. There was about this much water in it. Maybe not 4 ounces, 2 ounces. Anyhow, that's it. But then you have to experiment with, all right, how much paint do I use? Do I have to thin it? Do I have to, and you get a million different answers, And that's the problem with the internet, is there's a lot of misinformation out there. And a lot of it has to do with people who have an agenda. And your agenda should be, my agenda is, if I'm going to provide some kind of a video, hey, how to help people from getting frustrated in this hobby. So one of the best things you can do is use paint that you don't have to thin. Because if you have to thin the paint, then you have to mix it somewhere else and then pour it in. And every time you transfer it from one location to another, you're wasting paint. And not only that, now it's another item you have to clean. So anyhow, yeah, I went in, sprayed this before we went to the gym. It took me 5 minutes, and peeled the stuff off, and then moved on, cleaned it in a moment, and I'm back on. You don't want something that punishes you, that you have to spend 45 minutes cleaning it to use it for 10 minutes. That doesn't make any sense. That'd be like going to the airport and getting on a flight, and you could have just, by the time you do that and go through TSA, you could have just driven there. It's just not a good. That's not a good value for your time. But I'm learning a lot. People will go, oh, I don't know what pressure to put it on. Well, it depends on the airbrush. Well, you just kind of have to experiment. Okay, at 40, it's too strong. At this, it's too little. That kind of thing. The AK paint, the AK paints, you run them like at 30, and they're fine. You can even go probably less than that, and you don't have to thin them. But again, it depends on the airbrush. If somebody does not have an airbrush, I'm like, Don't even look. Just go buy the same airbrush I had because it's amazing. It's not that it's so amazing. It's all the other airbrushes that I've tried are terrible. They just punish you for buying them. It's like, oh, really? You bought me, huh? Oh, you're gonna be sorry now. You know, that's like nobody wants to do that. You can sign up for a torture session. Flying out of here. Okay, so we need to put this little box here. So at some point I may do something like that. If you've got airbrush questions, please feel free to ask me. I'm not, unlike most people, and unfortunately this is most people. If I don't know something, I'm going to tell you I don't know. There's folks out there, there's people you encounter every day at work that just for some reason, they're like, if they don't know something, they feel like they got to come up with a freaking answer. And they don't realize that, if you give people raw answers, eventually they're not going to trust you. We all make mistakes, but, it's okay to say you don't know everything. You have a desire to airbrush for refurbishing die-cast cars. Yeah. And I don't know anything about enamel paints. I have a guy that I know who does a lot of airbrushing with enamels. I'm not getting into that. The whole reason I went to airbrush is I wanted to get away from bad smelling rattle cans. Okay, I don't want that toxic crap. In the air. So why would I want to airbrush enamels? And I don't have a spray booth. Okay, that's another thing I don't think you need. I spray outside. I don't spray in here. And I spray where the thing's open. And I spray away from me. And I'm not spraying that much material anyways. So, if you buy a spray booth, it's just something else that clutters your area. Eventually I may get one if I decide to spray in here. But even being neat, things happen where liquid with paint falls on the floor. Now, I haven't gotten any on me. But still, you can get some on the floor. I don't want to deal with that in here. I've got tile, and last thing I need is clean paint out from between the grout. So it's not worth it, And yes, it's hot in the garage. So I just plan on doing it when I'm already dirty. I come back from work, I'm going to take a shower anyways. I'll go airbrush something, then I'll take a shower, Okay, we're going to skip that step. This other little box is box 40. She sits all the way over here. No, we're going to put 89 in because it's the only thing over here, and it keeps me from putting that other piece in. But it's humbling. But one of the best things you could do is go, and I've had to do this with something else. It's good to have an empty slate and just go, okay, I don't know everything. All right, so let me watch several videos of several different people, and they're all going to tell me sometimes conflicting things, and eventually you can make up your own mind. Hey Eric, how are you? But I'm never going to be a person that is going to just be airbrushing mainly. That wasn't the purpose for me to get an airbrush. I basically wanted a prime to get away from that with an airbrush to get away from the rattle cans, and I wanted to seal with an airbrush to get away from the rattle cans. And then I'm like, okay, well, I might as well just paint the whole thing in the base color, if I have it. That could save me some time. But I'm still weathering and stuff with the brush. I'm never going to be as good with the airbrush as I am with a brush. I mean, it's got 35 years of a head start. Maybe if I live to be 120 or something. But The thing that actually surprised me the most about the airbrush, and I have a good one. I have a Iwata CP, whatever the hell it is, Eclipse PS CP or something like that. It's excellent. But one of the things that kind of surprised me about it was that there is a very fine margin of error between when you start getting some paint out and then you have and then you have too much paint. I mean, I swear it's like a millimeter or a millimeter and a half. So you got to be like really really precise with that, or you have too much go out, which isn't a big deal, but I just wasn't expecting that. I wish there was a way to dial that to make that margin of error, too much, bigger. It's like it's almost like if it was a pistol, it had a 1 pound pull on the trigger. It just has a hair trigger on it when it's just too much paint. And but it's an interesting challenge. But every time I do it, I learned it. Like I said, I've learned the most because I was doing it for a long time. On Sunday, I was out there like 4 hours doing it. Okay, so this is supposedly is a channel for this antenna to fit in. And it's not a channel, it's totally solid. So it is what it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this thing, I'm going to glue this in place, and we're going to drill this hole. We'll drill the hole afterwards. There's just not enough of this to hold on to. So when we put that wire in, it'll have something to, we'll just do a 90-degree turn on it. Let's go ahead and glue this thing in place. The paint mixture being off compounds that problem. After you've used the AK paint, I don't know if I want to use it under the paint. It is so freaking easy to use, and you can use it right out of the bottle. Right out of the bottle. Yeah, you can use the Vallejo, but you have to thin it down. And I know you're not supposed to mix it in the cup. I do anyways. Because otherwise, you have to mix it somewhere else, not spill it, pour it. You waste a third of it pouring it. And I'm using very, very small amounts. It's fine. You just have to experiment. You're going to do stuff wrong all the time. None of it is a colossal error. You got to make mistakes to learn it. It is really kind of, The only thing frustrating about airbrushing is, I saw where you went, you bastard. The only thing frustrating about airbrushing is if you're using an airbrush that is a nightmare to clean. So, if you buy a really cheap airbrush, you just signed up for a shitload of problems. And I didn't know that until I bought a cheap airbrush and noticed what the difference is. It is exactly like the problem with a Ruger Mark 1. It's exactly like a Ruger Mark 1. It is such a pain in the ass to take that pistol apart and clean it that you never want to take it apart and cleaning it. And because you don't take it apart and cleaning it, it malfunctions all the time. Oh yeah, it's not an exact science. You gotta be flexible. But the best thing to do is work on it when you don't have a time frame. Like, I got to get this model done by that's not the time to work on the airbrush, okay? Do it when it's like, I don't care if I get anything done today. And you will. You'll pick it up. Okay, so that little guy's done. What goes here? Happy Light 86. Happy Light 86. That's the problem with cutting these things off, is there's nowhere to grab them. So if I cut this far away from the piece, so I don't damage it, now I've got to somehow hold this thing down while I trim it up. And that's as good as it gets, because there's just too small. I can't like scrape any of the flash off, so it's like, that's it. That's how it stays. You've had several airbrushes, and my $45 Master Airbrush is my favorite. It's the one airbrush that broke the rule. You get what you pay for. Love that thing. Better than any Iwata I've ever owned. Well, after I got an Iwata, I'm never getting anything else. But the first one I had was a Masters, and was siphon fed. And I would rather fill in the blank than use a siphon fed anything. Because now on top of everything else, you've now added you got to make sure that the pressure's right so it sucks the paint out. You've added another whole litany of variables. So whatever you do, do not get a siphon fed airbrush. And I probably would have given up on the airbrush if I got a Masters airbrush that came with my compressor. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to get a compressor. I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to buy it through Amazon. If there's a problem, I can just return it at Kohl's, right? It's easy to return things on Amazon. And, you know, because I was tired of the rattle can situation. It was just got very, very toxic. So I'm like, I'm going to make it easy. But I'm going to be smart this time. I know it comes with an airbrush. I'm going to make sure that it's a gravity-fed airbrush. I got it. It didn't work once. That Masters airbrush, it wouldn't even, the paint just would not go into the airbrush. I cleaned it, took it apart, watched videos from Masters airbrush. I must have gotten a faulty one. So I'm like, I guess we'll have to return. And something about me just said, all right, let's give this a fair shot. The compressor's good because it was one that had a tank. And okay, so I didn't, because basically you're paying for the compressor and the airbrush is free almost. So let me go to freaking Hobby Lobby and get a Iwata airbrush. And if it doesn't work with that thing, then I'm just giving up and I'm just going to do rattle cans. Hell with it, you know. I've been painting 35 years without one. I think I can do it. And voila, it was like amazing. It was like, oh, this just works like this always should work. Hold the piece with blue tack. You can trim flash easy on tiny pieces. You'll have to do a video on it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know how I can hold it down. I can't be good at everything, Nordic. Totally agree about the siphon fed. I'd rather get an enema from 4 Hillbillies than better a Ford F-150. Did use one of those again. And you're a Chevy guy, right? 4 Hillbillies. So what are the other 3 doing? I don't want to know. You're in North Kakalaki, aren't you? Yeah, I'm sure you can find 4 Hillbillies nearby. Yeah, the siphon thing is just, it just doesn't, it's just you're adding a whole other. No, I may actually, seeing how I had a shitload more experience than I did 3 months ago when I had that Masters airbrush. I still have it. I mean, it was free. The one that's gravity fed. I might pull out and mess with it. And then I've got 2. You know, I've got one that I can use for, you know, if I got to. So I'm not opposed to it now that. So here's one thing about that Masters airbrush, okay? I bought the Iwata. It didn't come with a hose. Like, about a $150 airbrush. It did not come with a hose. Didn't know that. So I'm using the hose from the Masters airbrush. So, And the hose costs like 20 bucks. So I really got something for it. So I probably, the biggest problem with the Masters airbrush is it is a pain in the ass to put back together compared to the Iwata. But I probably will mess with it now that, there's a lot of things I don't have figured out. Maybe that's the one I use for the AK paint and. And I still have the original one that I hate, so I'd just get rid of that one. That one's siphon. That's like you punish somebody, you give them that. I am. They probably use a can of Fanta Orange for the. Oh man. Chevy guy, huh? I am a devout fan of rice burners. Nordic likes Japanese women. I like Japanese cars. Okay. These two things. It is so much easier to do this with some form of reader because I don't fumble as much. If I take my contacts out, if something's 8 inches from my face, I can't see it. So I'm going around like freaking Velma. It's like the Velma painting channel. And then somebody wrote something, I think. Okay, let me go and see what it said. I got to stick like my freaking nostrils into the damn computer. You're actually a Ford guy. I don't understand. And you may disagree with me. I don't understand why the best vehicles in the world aren't made in this country. I just don't understand. I would be glad to buy them, but that, and I like vehicles that nobody likes anymore. Nobody wants stick shift vehicles. I'm that idiot. The only good thing about living in Europe for me would be that. Uh-oh. These are at an angle? Okay, cool. We can put them in. But this is a incredible model. This is really, really, the tracks, the separate link tracks are amazing. And I remember when separate link tracks came out in the early 90s, I was 18, 19, 20 years old. And I'm like, what kind of hell is this? And I'm like, okay, well, I have more patience now. I have the tools to do it. And it's really relaxing, honestly. I know, it's going to end up on the floor, isn't it? Well, I have to hold it at this angle. The floor is vacuum, so this will be the only thing down there. Because American shipped overseas corporation may kill instead of producing top-notch die. Just doesn't make any sense, I mean, in World War II, American cars were the best. I mean, they were the best thing. I mean, they were so good, other people were making them. American trucks and stuff like that. They weren't perfect, but. Or, I say this all the time. I got a lot of people on here that watch this channel from Britain. Okay? It makes sense. Wargaming started in Britain. Why don't they make excellent freaking cars in Britain? They made the fucking Spitfire, okay? There's no reason why they shouldn't make excellent things there, I played Art de la Guerre last week visiting Scott. Really liked it much better than DBM. Still has those conforming issues. All DBX games, I think I can live with those. Yeah. Do I have a copy? Pick up a copy of Combined Arms? No. Here's why. Somebody gave me a pirated copy. I lost mine along the way. I bought the rules. So I don't have I don't have a problem with having a pirated copy because I bought the rules. Somehow they're lost somewhere. I didn't sell it. And here's the thing that really disappointed me about it. I thought it went into like the 50s. Because I'm like, it'd be kind of cool to do like a Folder Gap thing in like when Eisenhower was president, right? Or like, early Kennedy. Well, like there's a late Kennedy. It's only like freaking 3 years or 2 years or whatever. But, something like that where, you've got stuff in Europe and you've got light, medium, and heavy tanks still, So you've got, like, for the Americans, you've got Walker Bulldogs, you've got Pattons, and you've got M103s. That'd be pretty cool, right? So I'm like, what are the stats of these things? They don't have them 103s in there. It's like they don't start until like vehicles that were around in 1980. I was really disappointed. Yeah, I was really disappointed. But if I was going to play Command Decision, I would probably modify it to give it more detail and make it a little bit less predictable. But I think that the core mechanics that are there are pretty good. I really like the way he handles penetration on his tanks and everything. And rate of fire, all that makes sense to me. You know? And I really like, at least in the World War II stuff, that his numbers translate, his armor numbers almost translate into centimeters of armor. So, 87. The one I wouldn't mind playing is Mortem et Gloriam, but I'm going to take Ancients and Medievals off the table for the near future to deal with them. I'm like, I got to keep playing this DBA game because if it dies, I don't want these 10,000 hours I've spent building these armies I won't be able to use these armies again. And now I'm like, okay, playing that game is keeping me from doing this. And I'm enjoying the hell out of this a lot more for multiple reasons. First of all, I am a World War II guy. I always was. And now there's all kinds of stuff to read about that weren't available 20 years ago that makes it exciting. And I'm not playing the game at a convention. I can take as long as this freaking takes. And if I never get around to playing a game, I never get around to playing a game. It's okay. It's okay. But the main thing with the ancients and medieval stuff is I spent a lot of time researching the heraldry and all that kind of stuff. And I enjoy that stuff. And to have a game that doesn't reward me, that basically makes every unit the same. I'm putting a lot of effort into making these units look like they're supposed to. And the rules are just kind of like, they're all just kind of, it's hidden in there. And I'm like, I'm a detail guy. I'm not an Algebra 2 abstract guy. You see, what you see is what you get. Speaking of World War II, discover the Pendragon does indeed carry the Char B, but it's the German tank session for some reason. How strange. The Germans captured a lot of them, and they used them in all kinds of places. I don't think that they made a modification to the Char B that would be noticeably German. They made some flame-throwing Char Bs. I don't think the French had those, but they didn't add like a cupola, or I don't think they added anything different to it. So that's strange that it would be in the German tank section. That tank has some funny looking tracks. They almost look like, I think they look like corrugated roof or something like that. I was playing one of the scenarios I played of blind ASL. This guy had designed this scenario, and I got these German troops that were they had these ammo trucks. I had to go get these ammo trucks in town, and these Char Bs show up, and I've got nothing that can deal with them. I think I had a Stug or something like that, but he was in the wrong place or something like that. And even that they can only deal with a Char-B if they've got one of those hollow charge rounds, which you're lucky to have more than one of them, or even one. And that game is weird. You fire it, and if you roll really high, it's like not only do you miss, but you never have the round. It's like you can't like pre-count and say, okay, well I got 3 rounds of it, or I got 1 round, or you got no rounds. You just have to kind of try and shoot, and hopefully you don't roll bad enough that it means you don't have any of the ammo. But anyhow, I couldn't deal with them in any way, and they were in this town, so I grabbed one of the trucks, moved it next to the Char-B, and invited him to fire at me. And when he did, it blew up and took the Char-B with him. Barbie the Char-B. That'd be a good name for the tank. Well, you know why I wouldn't do Poland. Only because I'm not putting my Germans with just white crosses. It's like, what is this, the Swiss Army? So if I did do Poland, I would still mark them up like they were in France. And I could probably deal with that because the Polish are kind of interesting. There's nothing wrong with the French. I think that the French are plenty interesting. It's just the campaign didn't last long enough, you know? And I really dislike Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs with no storage thing. Without this thing on the back of the turret. It looks weird as shit. It looks like a freaking bald baby. You know, they have a round back of the turret. It's okay on the Panzer IIs. I can deal with it on the Panzer IIs. 3s and 4s just looks weird. Just super weird. And no tanks had those until after France. Okay, so we've got... Okay, this is the thing with that fire extinguisher. We can go ahead and put that thing in now. That piece is piece 90, and there she is. I don't know how a fire extinguisher of this small size would make a difference in an engine fire. I don't mind early war from, the weapons being weaker. That doesn't bother me. If you do early war, you can do the 231 6-rads. Because after France, those are gone. Which way does this thing fit? It's got the vertical thing, which is that way, faces the rear. Okay. You know what I'm not motivated to do? I'm not motivated to paint figures. That doesn't mean I'm not going to paint them. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to paint them and be disappointed how they look. I got a lot of experience freaking painting figures and being happy with what they look like. I want to break. It actually takes just as long to build a tank as it does to paint a figure. Unless they're like a tank commander or something like that. Okay, this is supposed to fit this way. It won't fit on there because it's going to hit on this thing. I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. Oh, and it won't fit because of that. This is one of those screwed if you do, screwed if you don't. All right, let's try it again. If you don't use the tweezers, this would have been a morass. I think we can deal with that. Okay. This says to go here. That box makes it seem like it goes over these guys. I know it doesn't do that. All right, let's put the spare road wheels together. I didn't know, speaking of France, I didn't know that the battle for Norway was going on at the same time, and France fell before the Norway was completed. I did not find that out until I was watching the Narvik movie, which is okay. It's an okay movie. If you haven't, oh great, now I got hiccups. If you haven't seen it, it's worth seeing. Not the best thing ever. Actually, the combat scenes in it are the worst part. The rest of the movie is actually pretty interesting. Any movie that you watch that's historical, that makes you, when the movie's over, go up and pick up Wikipedia or a history book or anything and learn more about the conflict that you just saw in there, is a win. That's like a prerequisite for, that's the whole reason to watch a war movie. It's called Narvik. It's on Netflix right now. It's a couple years old. It's a Norwegian thing. Marcus, thank you for the decals, my friend. We're going to be putting those on tomorrow. Even though I have an illegal Panther. I have a Panther A that doesn't have Zimrit, which apparently there weren't any of that. I don't like Zimrit. I think it looks silly, especially on something like a Panzer IV with Schertzen. What a mess. I've seen pictures of Panzer IVs with Schertzen in Normandy, and it's a freaking with Zimrit, and it is just a mess. They got numbers that look like they were drawn by somebody with a crayon or lipstick. So tomorrow we will be decaling the Panther and the Panzer IV-H. This kit is amazing. This is an amazing kit. Unfortunately, they don't make too many more like it. Those fit there. So, and that fits there. So which is the piece that fits down? I guess that one. Yeah. I mean, the road wheels. I mean, I'm not a road wheel Nazi. But they're freaking gorgeous. Let's see. I gotta zoom in on it. It's really quite amazing. And unfortunately, of this detail, I think the only ones that they make is they make a Panzer IV-H, which I have, and they make a T-34-85, which I have no interest in getting it because I have lots of T-34-85s in 76 scale. I got like 8 of them. It's kind of hard to see, but this thing's got all kinds of bolts. It's really amazing. It's really amazing. And the last separate link track thing I did actually had the link count was off. This one was on, spot on. When they start using Zimrit, it is after Kursk. So like August of 43. And I may be wrong. It might be September. You can look it up. But basically after Kursk, they made this declaration that the Fuhrer or whoever freaked out and like, oh, they're going to put these anti-magnetic mines on us. Yet nobody really developed them. The only way they get them is if they stole one from the Germans and put one on there, really. But every vehicle from August 43 until October 44 that was produced, not counting half-tracks, okay? Every assault gun, Panzer IIIs, which they made a few Panzer IIIs during that period, not too many, probably 3 Ns. Every Panzer III, Panzer IV, all built during that time period would have Zimrit on it. If it was already built, the idea is to go back and retrofit it in the field and put it on there. And of course, that was done extremely sloppily. And back when I was doing modeling of 1/35th scale stuff, I remember vividly, I had a book, I might still have it, that said the Panther specifically had a Zimrit pattern that was just squares. It wasn't, it wasn't like the Tiger one that has like that waffle pattern, which actually looks a lot better. They were just squares. And the other day I was looking for, and that's not true either. They had, depending on the factory, what they did. So you've got some vehicles that were built, their production run happened through there. Panther A's. Panther A's were all built during that time period. There was no Panther A's that were made after like June of 44. And the Panther A's all started at about that same time period in August or September 43. So all Panther A's would have Zimrit on them. Every single one of them would have it. And I've got this Panther A that was made by BP Cast with no Zimrit on it. The entire run of Panzer IV H's would have Zimrit on them, except for the ones that were made before that transition happened. So if you have a Panzer IV H at Kursk, it wouldn't have Zimrit on it. But again, sometimes you have to make compromises. Okay, I know this kit's not accurate, but I have it. F it. Am I going to put separate Zimmer on it? No. But it's, just like, well, I built this, I have this Protz truck and it might not be accurate, but it's from Lizard's Grin, it's older than shit, and I'm going to use it, Build a Fusimi elephant and need to add Zimmer. This might be my first attempt with green stuff molding. I wouldn't do it. There's companies that check on Panther. I have a Zimrit mold on it. It looks surprisingly really good. If it's already molded on it, yeah, no problem. They actually make a set for the Brum Bar. I was looking for it. It's like $11 and it's made of paper. And it's cut for like the Dragon one or something like that. I came across it. I'm like, that doesn't seem too fiddly, except that you've got to glue it on with paper. You got to glue a paper thing on with white glue. That's just fraught with all kinds of problems could happen. If people complain about photo etch, that's a nightmare. I don't think the photo etch is only bad because you have to use super glue or something like that. Yeah, I wouldn't make Zimrit because then you got to do all that work and then you got to get a trowel that's the right size. How's that saying go? Somebody has too much free fucking time on their hands for that. I don't, I would just build it normally and just say, hey, it's one that got away. No, they were all done. Prove it. That's all I'm going to do to this Panther. It's not like you're going to paint it gray or anything. I actually wouldn't mind building another Franken Panzer IV. I know that sounds crazy, but it was pretty empowering to build those extra little parts out of green stuff. And it wasn't that much of a pain in the ass. The track was a pain in the ass. But I feel like I learned some valuable skills by doing it. I don't know whether I'm just fooling myself, but it sure seems that way. Dealing with problems at work, being a fixer at work, which that's what most of us do, I think. Most people are fixers of some form or another. Really makes it a lot easier to work on these models. It's like, all right, I got to get through this. I'm not going to let this thing kick my ass. What do I have to do? Okay, that's the 2 spare road wheels. We're gonna wait. That part C does not go there. Let's look for at a top version of it. I guess it does. Why would it go on top of the S hooks? I don't believe it. Because it wouldn't sit over it. Why mold them and then I'm gonna punt on that. What else is left? Just that? I got the fire extinguisher on. That's literally the only thing missing. Got the horn, got that other light, got the 2 headlights. Got the applique armor. Okay, the big piece. You want to put that the right way. You want to make sure that it's got that bar going across on the center teeth, holding it from falling in. If you do it the other way, it's like, hey, what's holding it up? This goes here. I used to watch hockey when we had here we go, we're going to date ourselves. You ready? A Sega Genesis Hockey League. And I had the Penguins in that. This is like 1992. And that was fun until some people cheated and they turned their scores in and it was like 58 to 49 or whatever. How the hell? Because they knew some kind of exploit or something like that. I'm like, all right, well, that was fun. That was fun till you're playing with cheaters. What do you remember? The Sega Genesis? I didn't have one. There was a game on the Sega Genesis, though. A friend of mine had one. It was a freaking awesome game. You'll be 53 this weekend. So you've got a year and 2 months on me. There's a game for the Sega Genesis called Star Control. And it was freaking awesome. At the time, it was freaking awesome. Look it up. I don't even know. I wouldn't do a good job of explaining it. Going to have a war game for your birthday. Which one? Have you picked it out yet? Okay, this is going to sit across here. I want to get it up off that joint because this joint is going to leave a little gap there that I'm going to fill in with the plastic putty, and I don't want that to get in the way. Man, I hope there's some deals at the show. I don't need anything, fortunately, but I don't mind putting these tanks together, and I don't care if they're old kits. Old kits need some loving too. I really get a kick out of doing something that's making something that's kind of a piece of shit or something nobody respects, and turning it into something good. I want to get one of those crappy little details those crappy detailed things they have on Amazon, like two of those Chinese made tanks for like $10 or something like that, and just see what I can do with them. There's actually one of them. There's a guy on there that posted a picture of how he weathered his two vehicles that he got, and it's amazing. It's like, this guy's obviously a modeler. You know, he took these little piece of crap things. Is there a game you wouldn't want them to give you? Oh, you could just send them to the Complete Strategist. They actually have quite a few games there. They have quite a few games, the Complete Strategist. I was surprised. I mean, they have a lot of stuff I wasn't interested in, but they actually have a lot of stuff that I was interested in. I'm glad I got a chance to hit those stores while I was in New York. Otherwise, I'd be like, man, I wonder what there was in the stores. You know, I don't have to, well, wonder no longer. Okay, that's going to sit like this, and all these little flash pieces come off. Got it. There's the little prongs. I hadn't seen them before. They're small. Little prongs that match up with these that are here on the engine deck. I don't know what grit this is, but this is definitely the grit size to use, because it's abrasive enough that you're not there all week, but also, you know, forgiving enough that you're not going to mess it up. Yeah, well, you got to remember, I live in a place where there's no physical shops. Well, that's not true. We have physical shops. They just don't have anything I'm even possibly interested in. It's all, you know, Warhammer kind of stuff. I had a dream the other day. I think it was Sunday night. Sunday night, I had a dream that I went to a convention and this guy was selling terrain. And I'm not talking about like regular terrain. Good sandy stick is your everyday emery board. I don't have one. This guy was selling. One of them was like a Guns of Navarone thing that he had made. One of them was like a couple like hills like for the freaking desert, but they were huge. What's a dream? Anything's possible, right? It was like 4 foot by 4 foot, and it was like, you know, obviously for the same scale I'm doing this. And this other guy had done this Guns of Navarone thing, and I swear the thing was like 6 foot tall. And it was like, oh man, I could do that, then we could have a Guns of Navarone game, and then I woke up. That's all I remember. And I was like, it was like, you want like $175 for each one of them. I don't know why I remember that. You know, it's just some random thing. And I remember in the dream, I was cogitating, should I get it? Should I not get it? Should I, you know. You know how you know if you don't know anything about model railroads? You know how somebody, you know how somebody, you know how you know, You know how you find out if somebody doesn't know anything about railroads? There we go. They call it hose scale. Okay, I feel like there's something we skipped over. There's other than this box. We know this box, and I just don't know how in the hell that's going to fit over these two S things. That just doesn't seem right. I'm going to leave because it's always like strapped on the side of the. Well, let's see. Where is it on the other Panzer threes, Alice? Tongue tied. No, old. You'll get there. It's sitting over them. It's sitting right over them. Okay, we'll put it on there. You know, the thing about Dunkelgelb is I see lots of people doing their version of it, and I like their version better than mine. But I think mine's more realistic. It is a shitty ass lemon. It is an ugly yellow color that, you know, changes depending on lighting and weathering and stuff like that. But you look at this, and this looks very, very greenish. And part of it has to do is there's a lot of green on it. But I think it's actually an accurate color. But I do technically like something like this better. But I don't think this is accurate. Ain't no hose there. How does it say? This one, I'm just matching it the same way this other one is. Don't tell me this one wants to do it the other way. Front to back, huh? What's this way? Okay. I don't want to see those S hooks anyways. I think that's everything, right? We don't have any extra parts. A vehicle that comes with no extra parts. What the hell is that all about? All right, I got to take a potty break. I'll be right back. Speaking of model railroads, what would be the appropriate gauge for 10 millimeter? 15s would be pretty close to N. N's 1/44. Then you go into Z, and Z is like 1/285 scale. I don't think there is one between the two. $15 mils, what, like one hundredth? Is 1/100th 15, or is it 1/144th? N is 1/44th, and Z is like 1/300th or something like that. I don't think there's anything between the two. You got Z's the smallest one, then you've got N, then you got HO, which is 1/87th, and then there's a OO gauge, but that's like really only a UK gauge that I don't know that they even still make anything for it. There's an S that's a little bit bigger than that, and then you go up to O gauge. 15 is 1/100. Okay, so you want to go like N scale. Yeah, you want to go like N scale. Okay, so this guy, I don't know that I'm going to put it together before I paint it. It's going to make the tracks a hell of a... Well, let's see. Let's see. That's meets there. That meets there. What do we got at the front? A little bit of a gap, which I know that we're going to have to fill. All right, let's try gluing this thing together. Garden scale. I hate garden scale because it's condensed. My dad always disliked the G scale. I had a train set growing up. I had a Lionel O scale, and then it disappeared in one of our moves. We think it got left in an attic. My dad was big into trains. And when I worked at the hobby store, I was the resident train guy. The thing is just like this, you know, I only have time for one thing. So when I have time for one thing, then it's going to be, you know, what I'm really into. Use of railroad tracks? Yeah. You don't see it very often. There's some guys that have done some railroad tracks with Stalingrad sets, but Stalingrad stuff. Not a fan of Stalingrad stuff. I don't find any of the units that found at Stalingrad particularly interesting. That probably has something to do with it. Probably has a lot to do with it. So I found out another thing that was really interesting just today, because one of the units that I'm not interested in involves one of them. 116th Panzer Division at Normandy, right? The Greyhound. Their unit that had the tanks was in training. They were in training away in Germany. So the tanks that they had were borrowed from the 24th Panzer Division. So the tanks in Normandy on the 116th Panzer Division would have had the jumping guy on the tank. You know, the jumping cavalryman. Okay, I think this is pretty solid. Man, it almost doesn't even need the gap filling thing. We'll let that sit for a little while. Well, I don't want to get rid of this because I'm having an issue with turrets like falling off. Another fumbling situation, but I'm going to cut this nib a little thinner so it has more flex in being able to turn it and I don't scrape the paint away. I think that's the way forward. keep it, but just make it a little bit more, less friction. Yeah, okay, now this thing has dried enough. We can go ahead and drill it. Here's one of them, but that's the bigger one. We want to start with the little guy first. I have not even heard of iron holes, iron hearts. What is it about? I'm almost done with this book that I'm reading on Audible now called On a Knife's Edge, I believe is what it's called. And it's basically between December 41 to Kharkov in 42, in 43, sorry. And it's okay, but man, I need a freaking map. Everything I'm interested in reading just involves like a map all the time. I'm going to ask you guys a question, see if you know. It's not really a quiz. Maybe you do know what it is. I actually have a book that I didn't realize I had, and I bought the book on Audible and listened to it, but yet I have the hard copy of the book as well. And I got a kick out of that. I may have mentioned that earlier. I didn't realize that that was the case. But it's a book. It's called, it's about a machine gunner on the Eastern Front. And it's called, what's it called? It's a Nazi machine gunner. What is it? Anyhow, one of the reasons for it is there's a is this it? Well, I'm having a hard time getting in there. No. I'm terrible about putting things back where they go. I get distracted with you guys and anyways, there's this book that is involves this guy's experiences as a machine gunner on the Eastern Front. It's told in first person. And there's this word that he keeps using all the time for these gullies that are specifically for the steppe. In the Russian steppe, they have these gullies that, you know, you got this steppe that's basically devoid of all terrain, and you'd go and there'd be a hole there you wouldn't know, and it was like they would hide under the reverse slope of it. And it was this particular word over and over again. And I wanted to look it up to see if somebody has ever built it terrain-wise for the tabletop. And I can't remember what the damn thing's called. And I really don't want to search through. Audible is great, but it's a pain in the butt to go through and try to find specifically. And he mentions it all the time in there. You guys have a clue what I'm talking about? It's something like Kurgan, but it isn't a Kurgan. Kurgan is something else. Here it is. It's called Blood Red Snow. This guy's name's like Joshimek or something like that. Gunther Korschorek. Memoirs of a German Soldier on the Eastern Front. Never read this book in person, but it's okay. It has some parts that are interesting. There's a part where they're on the defensive and there's a Flampanzer, and he goes and he takes care of business. I believe the word is, it's one of those words, have you ever listened to a book and then you hear something and then you're like, how in the hell is that spelled? And then you find it, and then you're like, oh, that's spelled totally different than what I thought. It's one of those type things. Let me see if I can find this quickly. And it's probably a word that you guys have seen before, but it's not something that comes up all the time. I did search on the internet for like, gully and, in the Ukraine. 132nd Area Division, North Africa. I have any interest in that? Area Division is the best time formation of war. First class unit, class equipment, brazen chariots. Yeah. This isn't a great read. You know what is a great read and isn't available anymore? I'll look at it in a second. Don't leave. I need to find this because on the way to work I'm thinking, oh shit, I remember what this is. Yeah, there's maps and shit in here. Okay. This is Through Bottomless Mud. See, this is a time period that's not known really well. And that's late 43. Late 43, like after Kursk, especially like in the mud and stuff like that, that area is just... Here it is. This thing right here. I found it. He talked about these all the time. The word is Rachel, he would call it, and spelled it Rachel or Balka. I'm going to write that down because I'm going to search for if people have ever, it's just a gully. But when you have a featureless steppe, how do I not have a writing implement? I would keep hearing a rachel. I'm like, what? A what? I've never heard that any time in my life. It's spelled like R-A-C-H, yeah, right? Yeah, like Rachel. Balka. Okay, perfect. This is the book you need to read. You can't find it anymore. Actually, I need to reread this. I wish I could just read it online to you guys. I think that'd be fun, but I don't want to get into copyright issues. Of course, the author has passed away, and I don't think that the company's in business anymore. And this is a guy that was a local author in the early 90s. He came by when I was working at the hobby store, and he was promoting this book and said, hey, you guys mind if I try to sell some of these? And I guess we told him it was okay. And it's a series of short stories. You can find it on Amazon for an absurd amount of money. Madness Without End. And look, you see the two S's look slightly different there. Almost like it's supposed to, but it's Tales of Horror from the Russian Front. I've brought this up before. It's unfortunately falling apart. It's a binding issue. This is like 93 or 94. It's by an author named Russ Schneider. He was a guy who lived around here in 1994. Yeah, he lived, he drew his own maps. Yeah, the maps are not anything to write home about. But it is a series of short stories in here. Totenkopf is not well liked. You think? So he's got several stories, and I think 60% of them or so, or 2/3 of them are from the German viewpoint, and some of them were, and they've got gore and stuff in there. I don't think they're over the top, but, I think there might be some ideas for scenarios and stuff like that. Just for some inspiration. It's not like a horror story like there's zombies or something like that, but, there's guys that encounter, T-34 tanks with like skulls on them and shit like that, But this is a guy who was a kind of a war gamer, and he was kind of a history guy, and he decided to write all this stuff on there, Yeah, so here's a scenario that talks about, here's the first story he's talking about, and this is a guy who's in a Panther. Said there was 3 of us, Buchel in 711, Grossrock in 714, and myself, Shides in 701. All that were left. The others remained somewhere in the emptiness ahead, wrecked or else had been towed disabled back to the river. We were to rendezvous with 5 more from Totenkopf. Panther crews, all of us. We 3 were Viking, a total of 8 Panthers that remained out of our 2 divisions. So, it talks kind of, they're in first person, and I remember enjoying them. So anyhow, this is Damn SS. You got that right. Anyhow, that's a book that's not available. I'd love to read that online to you guys, but I don't think I can get away with. I don't want to do the homework that it would entail seeing if I could even do that. They're not making the book anymore. The author's dead. The company's not around anymore, but still, I don't want to step on somebody's toes, but it is pretty freaking cool. And he had a second book that's not as good. I think we're done with this guy. All right, so this is the part where Nordic's going to get upset with me. Because I'm a noob when it comes to this. And he's the one that sold me on this stuff. So if I do a shit job, it's his fault. I gotta find it first. I think it's here. No, it's here. Vallejo plastic putty. I saw a video on using this today, this morning, and they said you can wet it with a brush. All right. So we're going to put some of this on and smooth it off with a wet brush. This applicator is freaking amazing. This is the equivalent of this applicator for the putty. So I also watched it's like everything that they make for Vallejo, like AK comes up with it too. They have their own version and it got 3 thicknesses, but it's like it takes 24 hours to dry. Like nobody's gonna deal with putty that takes 24 hours to dry. Actually, I don't know that I'm gonna have to use a brush for this. This applicator is freaking amazing. May have to do it under the tracks, and I tried to push the tracks out of the way as much as I could. I don't have my supervision on. I have my contacts in. I don't know that I'm going to touch this. I did look up the Panther of Heikendorf. I did. Hopefully they just put it in a museum, but there's most countries, Kevin, are not like Arizona where you can just sling a rifle on your back and you can just walk wherever you want and nobody says anything about it. There you can't even have I never could find out if he was like a war veteran or something like that. I mean, he was in his 80s. I guess he could have been. Así lo dejo. I'm leaving this until in the morning, and I bet that's going to be good enough. But I watched a video on how to use from Vallejo, how to fill in those recess holes. So that applicator is amazing. Perfect. I don't think the commander that we use for everything else can be used in there, can he? The guy I've been putting in everything? I've got others of them. I've just been... What Q-tip? It's just too big. I saw somebody using like a real brush. I'm like, oh, I know how to use a real brush. Q-tip? Yeah, I only use the Q-tips for the ears and I don't... I'm not that good with it. Oh. Where is he? Here he is. It's a Panzerführer. Let's see if he fits in here. I hope he does. No, he's too big. Oh well. You know, so I can show it with a guy in there and not have to paint another guy. I will eventually paint these guys. I'm just not very motivated. Did you get? I didn't show this on screen how well this freaking thing turned out. I have the patience for this. I got the patience for anything. This thing was a pain in the ass. The Frankenpanzer. And it actually has some decent details on it. In particular, the running boards. The diamond plate on the running boards. I don't know if the actual vehicle had. Yeah, the problem with the wet Q-tip is too big. I wouldn't be able to get it there. But I think that's going to work great. Anyhow, it has some decent detail. But this thing is definitely a candidate for being on a stand because after I was done with everything, these wheels broke off. So they're literally not even connected to it. It was just like one thing after another after another. You know, it's an old kit that's not built well, that's brittle, you know. But I think it ended up looking okay. You know, it's just a G. You know, it's a pre-Kursk or even Kursk period G. And I think it looks the part. I think it looks the part just fine. I'm happy with it, so. Anyhow. Okay. Put these guys back. It's really invigorating to build something that looks like crap and then fix it up. Like this thing is garbage. This thing is garbage too. Doesn't matter. When I get done with them, they'll look good. I don't know about this one. This has got to look like it's got mud or some shit on it. Because look at the finish on it. It is that bad. It'll end up being okay. You know, I'm thinking I might actually use this as a candidate to do the whitewash. That's right. I said it. I got a whitewash. I just don't know what I've never done it before. I've got the AK whitewash stuff that you can you put it on and then you wipe it off with. You take a brush and you rub it off. I think that this might be a good candidate for that. Make it look muddy and whitewashed. Anyhow, but this is, I don't even know who makes this. Probably Frontline. But I sprayed it and the green changed on me. I thought it looked one color and it changed. It's fine. It's just, it's more avocado than I wanted it to be. But this isn't the base yellow it is yet either, so. 10:30, do I still have some in me? Yeah, I'm not gonna sign off yet. We can do a little bit more. Let's get the, let's get this color out. And the brush we were using this morning, which was kicking ass. It was kicking some ass. It's not that one. I don't think it was this one. It was one that was smaller. Something like this. Yeah, like I said, I don't know if I'm going to get around to playing this game ever. But it doesn't matter. I'm going towards that goal. The important thing is I'm building models along the way that could potentially be used in a war game setting. This is the same base color. can't sign off yet? You're not done painting. Okay, fair enough. I am not a night owl, though. I know, this is like past my bedtime for sure. Which glasses we got on? Okay, those? Okay, cool. I think we can manage with these. Let's do all the edging in this color. So even though the camouflage goes over the edge, I like making these edges visible. Even with something like it doesn't look like it's got angles, like those Panzer IIs I did, there's all kinds of little subtle differences in the turret roof of the Panzer IIs that you don't really notice it until you start looking for it. Yeah, he apparently bought it legally, the Panther guy. I would think that probably his biggest crime would be he had a bunch of, SS regalia and stuff like that with swastikas. I could see that being a problem against their law, but the rest of this stuff, he bought the tank legally. It doesn't fire, Working on U.S. Navy ships for World War Games victory at sea. Is that the ships that are like mounted on a flip flop? Somebody said that one time in some post, and I'm like, oh, I'm saving that. Ships mounted on a flip flop. Yes, they are. I actually don't mind the flip flop. I actually saw somebody do them and they look pretty good. I don't like the name of the ship molded on there because, as you might buy, USS Cleveland or something, right? But maybe you want to paint it like one other one of the Cleveland class because there's 24 of them. And you can't, you've got to like sand that off. That'd be the only thing. I guess it'd be easy enough to take off. I saw somebody recently did the flip flops and actually looked. It's because the color of the water that he picked was incredibly good. I'm not buying GHQ ships again because I had like 400 of them. Well, GHQ and others way back in the day, and I sold them all. I wish I'd kept the pictures of them. They were painted like shit though. I was a kid back when I did like washing and stuff like that. And I did keep a couple of ships I did in a more modern way, and they look pretty good. Or I'm happy with them. All right. Now we're going to go up a color. I watched a video of a guy that did using these three color schemes and masking it with a card. That looks great. It's just not my style, It's not my style, and I've got too many. I've got hundreds of things to paint. I would never finish them all. There's zero chance of finishing them all if I'm going to paint like that. This is a 1970s refrigerator type of color. I'm going to mix an in-between color here. I want to make sure almost all the paint's off. That's the first miniatures I got was 1/2400 scale naval. Because that's all we used to play. So of all the theaters, the one I know the least about is aircraft. Because I really haven't gamed World War II aircraft other than playing flight simulators, aces over Europe and things like that. I have not seen the company that does that, but there's some counters out there that look pretty good. You can't really tell how this is going to look until you weather it and you put the decals on it, paint the tracks and stuff like that, and it really is going to come to life. Right now, it's kind of like, I don't really like it that much. But because I've done many of these, I'm confident that what I'm seeing now is not really the end result. And that only comes with experience. You've seen something so many times that you can see it at different stages and go, okay, this is, don't fret, because I don't like how it looks now, but I know that we're on the right track. We got to give the back some attention here. We're almost done. I'm going to try to see if I can finish this guy, at least to the point where we can decal this thing too. I took pictures of all these crummy things before they were painted and everything, so you can see, hey, look what this piece of shit looked like. Oh, it's a lot better now. I get a kick out of that. I get a kick out of doing these old models that nobody gives a crap about anymore. I did that when I was doing 15s. I enjoyed buying the things nobody wants. Well, it just happened that, people were getting rid of stuff. They're like, oh, something new comes along that's better. Let's get rid of this old stuff and do the new one. All right, we still have to do scratches and shit like that. All right. Let's get the wet palette out here. Let's go ahead and paint the track color and the tire color. You loved AC/DC. Not anymore? I don't know what the hell he's singing about. I think most people don't. I'm really bad at listening to lyrics. Really, really bad. And you combine it with one that's difficult to understand. Double whammy. That has live paint on it. I can't believe I don't have it over here. I'm gonna have to look at it. Okay, let's start with the black first. What game is that, Eric? I'm gonna play Lion Rampant all day on Saturday at the con, and And then maybe if I like it, play it with my 15s, but I'm not building any new stuff for it. Art de la Guerre, the French rules. Yeah, that was the game everybody was playing at Historicon. Tournament-wise. He had a bunch of players. I mean, he had like 35 players or something like that. Well, we'll see if they have 35 players in a couple of years. Players are nomadic. They'll be into something for a little while and then move on to something else. I actually seen a video how that game plays, and there's some things about it I like. Again, it still has that whole conforming thing that I wish it didn't have, but and I got Impetus. I've just never want to read it. Yeah, I've played Line Rampant I think twice before. It's a decent game because it has that press your luck mechanic, and I think it's a decent game if you add more flair to it. Like, I'm not interested in playing any tournament games, so it's real easy to just like, okay, in this scenario, we're going to modify this to, make it play more historical. So, I'm not playing in a tournament either, so. But it does have a really cool press your luck mechanic. Never mind the bill hooks. Is that only for War of the Roses? Baron's War. That's another one. Sounds like it's also War of the Roses only. Okay, so that's painted. Let's change tack. And don't Footsore is also a manufacturer of figures? Are they the guys that make those really pretty Renaissance ones? Sounds like it. I think that's the guys that. One of those companies has some freaking beautiful Renaissance stuff. Have you seen that guy from Portugal who does the stuff for rapid fire in 20 millimeter? Same scale this is, and he's got the whole Ariete division for rapid fire on there, which is kind of an unusual ask. Mortal Gods. Never heard of it. I never got a chance to play War Master. I don't know that I would have liked it, but that's one of those games that a lot of people have a lot of good stuff to say about. Or at least what I've heard. Oh, I guess some of these tires have black on them too. I'm not going to worry about them at this point. Based on where they are, they'd end up being covered in freaking this weathering anyways. You really like War Master. I never got a chance to play it. All those games that are discontinued by Games Workshop, almost everybody has a nice thing to say about them. It's like, what do? You just keep the ones everybody hates? You know? War Master, everybody had something nice to say about War Master. Everybody had everything nice to say about the skirmish one, Mordheim. Everybody had something nice to say about that one. Everybody liked Man of War. Oh, let's discontinue that one. Let's discontinue that one. It's like, is your business model to piss people off? You know, I mean, I don't understand what it is. You know. I'm not buying into something that they can just say, oh, we're not supporting these rules anymore. Well, wait a second, I've just devoted a lot of painting time to this, and I was just getting ready to finish my first army. Look at this. We got some brown on there that we shouldn't have. Oh, solved. That's why I don't like getting paint on me. Okay, so let's see. I gotta remind myself. I gotta do scratches first. I do scratches before I do that. Got it. Oh no, our customers are having fun. That's right. Maybe their business model is being a dick. How to be a dick. You know, it's just odd that it's happened multiple times. I mean, anybody can make a mistake. Like, yeah, I guess we shouldn't discontinue that one game. It is popular, but dude, you guys have done it multiple times. Epic. Lots of people have positive things to say about Epic. Why'd you guys discontinue? You know. What's the dungeon crawl one? Hero Quest. Yeah. Well, their business model doesn't really work well with me, or somebody that paints really slow, so. I'm glad their paint got better, though. They went back to, you know, a reasonable formula. Because the first one was great. I still have some of those. The first one was great. And and then the interim one was just terrible. Absolutely horrible. The paint wouldn't last, etc., etc. Just a litany of problems, especially when I was a big fan of the games. A lot of my World War II figures that I have from way back when were painted using Games Workshop paints. Warhammer Quest, yeah. Everybody liked that. Buy both. Buy neither. Buy 12 mil. Or what's this Warlord game skill that they're doing now? They're doing like 13 point something or another. Some nonsensical thing. Yeah, the problem with Micro Armor is their infantry sucks. It's not that it sucks. It's nobody wants to play it. It's just not interesting enough, and that's just a shame. I used to use Heroics and Ross infantry figures for when I did Command Decision. Okay, that's going to be good enough for me. Now, let's go ahead and put some gloss coat so we can end up decaling this at the same time. Of course, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. But pretty much the entire top section there, I gotta be careful with this. This is like a potential Armageddon. We don't need to get one that's huge. But we could potentially have one there. We'll do that whole side right there. Okay. And I don't know that I'll need it there. But I'll look into that later. Okay. That's it. So now this one's to the point where we can decal this one as well. Yeah, once that sets, we can do the numberings on there. And then weather. I think this is going to end up looking really good. It's kind of hard to say at this point, but I got confidence in it. But anyhow, that's going to be it for tonight. So thanks for coming by as always.